have Adam Miller and Jim Fitzsimmons. So thank you guys for being here and taking a little time out of your day. And we're here in Phoenix during Driver Appreciation Week, and it is hot.
Oh, it's hot here.
Oh my gosh.
It was worse last year, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you really think it was?
A little bit of relief,
Yeah.
I don't know.
The tent's cooling a lot better.
It's all the extra AC in the tent this year.
Yes.
Because last year was a little struggle.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to get you guys sit down and be able to have a discussion more about the deeper financials that you guys can maybe touch on following your last open filing stuff, because we don't want to dip into anything that you can't talk about because you can't talk about it. So why talk about it? And so I'm going to actually let Jeff dip into that stuff because he's way better with it than I am.
I am? Okay. Well, so a lot of, obviously we're mostly concerned with the owner-operator division. And one of the things that we need to be able to do is plan how we're going to react to the future. Mm-hmm. So if you could tell us from your perspective, what's the current state of freight? How are you looking at it? Because a lot of guys, let's be real. Guys are complaining, I'm sitting for 2 days, this, that, and the other thing. And are we starting to see that we're turning around a little bit? I know that we pay attention to several different analytic groups, and they keep saying it looks like we're at the bottom, but they've been saying that for 6 months.
And then it goes a little bit further.
So from your perspective, what are you seeing for Swift?
Yeah, I think, April felt like the bottom, and then it started to improve some. And then we probably had a little dip in July that felt tough as well. But we've seen freight improve really since probably the second week of July. And hey, as we go into the fourth quarter here in a few weeks, we're expecting kind of a modest improvement in freight. It wouldn't be a normal peak, I'd say. Most customers, I think, have worked through the inventory challenges that they found themselves in really this time last year and then into the first half of this year. And they've worked through a lot of those. And now I think they're getting back to maybe more normalized ordering patterns.
Right.
But not at peak levels where they're really concerned about moving goods, with a very quick pace to ensure that it's hitting the shelves. I mean, they have enough inventory for the most of the staples that they sell, but there will be a little bit of a surge for the holidays. And I think, we have freight in really all of our markets. There's some that have less than others, at times, and we have teams that kind of really work through, try to dig out on a daily basis. And if I'm an owner-operator, this isn't a market where you can be as selective as maybe you want, right? Because there's some that, hey, I'll sit here because I don't go west out of Phoenix. Well, you might be here longer. We can find a load, go to another location that gets you running and gets you moving. But if you want to be that selective, well, this isn't a market where, it's as easy to find that freight. 2 years ago, you could be that selective.
Well, and then when you do find them a load going east, it's 45,000 pounds, and they don't want to do that either.
Right. So this market, it's a little bit more challenging. You have to be a bit more flexible and nimble to navigate through it. But those that are willing to do that have done well, have done fine. Right. And hey, I think we're cautiously optimistic about the fourth quarter, and I think we're going to be in a position where we could see rate begin to improve in this next bid season, because we've taken a bit of a hit on rate.
Yeah, right.
You saw that in the first and second quarter filings, and I think most truckers have been talking about that kind of bleeding into the third quarter.
Right.
And hey, right now we're on a push to push the rate up, and that's with contract rates that we have currently, and that's also on the spot market where we can find better freight where we're going direct to customers, or find it in better markets. And so that's our focus right now, is to claw back some of the margin that clearly we lost this year versus the previous year. And when I look at our truckload business, it had one of the lower margins we've seen in some time. And so we've got to put ourselves back in a healthier position from a margin standpoint. Now, hey, we're a very healthy company from a balance sheet standpoint. There's no concern there. We're one of the strongest financially in the industry, but certainly not pleased with the margins we're at currently. So we got to kind of fight through that here.
So have you seen? So one of the bits of news that we get from the industry news sources is all of the smaller carriers that are going out of business. We saw a huge increase in authorities during COVID when rates were insane. And those guys have never seen a dip like this, so they just ended up going bankrupt because they don't know how to handle this. Yeah. Are you starting to see?
Way too much for their truck.
Oh yeah, $250,000 for an $80,000 truck.
Right. So are you starting to see kind of a balancing going on now that a lot of those people are out of the market completely? Are we starting to see that balance out for us?
I think the market we're starting to see has come closer to equilibrium.
Okay.
There's a couple things we look at. I think you can look at the authorities that have been issued, net revocations.
Right.
You know, we look at Landstar, the BCOs, because that's where a lot of the small independent carriers will go to access the spot market. Mm-hmm. And obviously that shot up to all-time highs, but now we're at pre-COVID levels. It's fallen off quite a bit.
Okay.
But at the same time, you still need demand to come back as well.
Right.
And in trucking, you never settle at equilibrium. Mm-hmm. So an object in motion stays in motion. So when supply is increasing, demand is decreasing, usually they pass each other in the night, and then you're in a market where it's advantageous to the shipper versus the carrier. Well, now it's flipped and going the other direction, and as we hit equilibrium, it'll continue to grow the other direction, and then it'll be in the favor of the carrier.
The normal ebb and flow of it.
Yeah, it's just the cycles have been so dramatic.
Right.
The last several years, and I think the pandemic caused that, where we moved a ton of freight in 2021 and first part of 2022, which led to less freight being needed to move in back half of 2022 into 23 because you had shippers that had a lot of inventory.
Right.
So coming out of that, there's a lot of, I don't want to say hate and discontent, but it feels like that at times from contractors, even within Swift. I mean, it's all of the big companies that everybody's feeling like, God, they just don't want us anymore. I mean, we've got all these guys that are starving. I believe some of it is very self-inflicted because it's, like we said at the beginning, I don't go west. I don't go to the Northeast. These sort of things. And instead of adjusting their view and actually focusing on the business and doing what they needed to get through these harder times, because they all came in during the peak of the COVID.
Peak, yeah.
And they're like, woo, everything's great. I get all the miles I want. I can do anything I want. There's a large group of people who think, well, Swift is just going to do away with the owner-operator division. We just don't want them anymore. We're just cutting them off at the knees, and it's just not advantageous for Swift is the way they feel like. So they don't feel like there's a lot of support for them in that. With that, what is it that Swift is doing to try and curb that? I mean, the load board is, it's a touchy subject. It's a sore subject for a lot of contractors because it's been so long in the works. Putting that aside, what is it that we can look forward to, not necessarily in direct support, but how do we help bolster that and let people know that, no, we need contracts, or maybe we are shrinking that. I don't know because I'm not you guys and I'm not trying to put you in a spot, but how do we approach our viewers and our contractors to say, this is where we stand now with our customer?
Yeah, there was a lot there to unpack.
I know, I'm sorry, man.
It's a long question, but
I apologize.
Let me start with, so clearly freight has been down, right? So there's no argument that the freight volumes aren't where they were even pre-COVID, because normally this time of year we'd be kind of blowing and going, getting excited about a fourth quarter where we get a lot of surge, a lot of opportunities. Customers have just a lot more freight to move, where this fourth quarter is probably going to be kind of similar to last fourth quarter, where it just stays somewhat flat. Now we're seeing more signs of life, like just yesterday or last night I found out you have a monster there. We just got a new award. We're going to be moving 30 to 50 loads, start off at 30 per day, California to Phoenix. And so that's a great sign when we win, a new award that's 30 loads a day. That's a lot of volume. And so I think we are starting to see better signs of freight coming back around. So I definitely think we're at the bottom, for sure. We've been saying the last few weeks, how long will the bottom last? Now, to your point, definitely owners can do themselves some favors by not being as selective, whether it's where it goes or weight, or maybe even length of haul, right? You're better off to cover a 300-mile load than you are to sit and wait another 24 hours to get a 600-mile load. Keep the wheels turning, keep the revenue coming in. But, we'll probably won't have a market like it was, during the COVID where the freight's falling from the sky. that's actually not a bad thing, right? Because that's why so many people got into trucking, and that's what caused this, correction to be, so steep. But to your question about, do we want owners? Do we want to, get rid of them, or do we want to grow them? We definitely want to keep growing. Now, we're not looking to do like rapid growth. So right now, we're just trying to kind of maintain our truck count. So we look at seated truck count as one of the most important measures we have.
Right.
And so that's, if you give up trucks, we'll have drivers ask us, hey, how come we don't just, get rid of a couple thousand trucks and drivers, and the rest of the drivers would be better off, right? Which, yeah, that's true. But then when this market flips, the company's in a much worse spot.
Right.
And it's hard for us to live up to our commitments we make with our customers when the market does flip. It goes both ways, right? So like in a down market, we're trying to hold our customers to the commitment, so they're not, just chasing the cheapest trucking, company out there. And there's some give and take both ways, and so it's not a perfect world or a perfect science, but it definitely works where we've got good partnerships, with our customers where, right now I feel like we're getting our fair share of the freight they have. It's just there's less freight to go around right now.
Okay.
There's no question that the economy is, a little slow as far as the inflation going up and fuel prices, and people are having a hard time, going out and to spend as much at the retailers that they were, say, 2, 3, 4 years ago. And so I think, as this market starts to get tighter and tighter, as more truckers go out of business, and I think right now you got, this has been going on now for 18 months.
Right.
Insurance isn't getting any cheaper for anybody, including us. And then fuel just continues to go up week after week after week, which, for the small guys, it just kills them.
Oh, yeah.
So that's another.
It is the destroyer of smalls.
Yeah, it's a huge benefit, right, when you contract with Swift that we cover you on fuel. And so another point I want to make is that we have recruiters recruiting owner-operators, and so it's weekly we track that to see how many did we get in, how many did we lose, but the goal is to try to at least break even, if not grow. So to answer your question with a very direct answer, yes, we want to keep our owners. Yes, we ideally like to keep growing that. We just don't want to grow right now until we start to see, a surplus of freight coming into the system.
In that growth, and you don't have to answer, you can just tell me to just be quiet, Charlie, move on. What are we looking, let's say we start hitting that growth peak, what are the big plans for the contractor division, the owner-operator division? Are we looking to build back up to that 2,500 level? I think we peaked out at one point back in the heyday, like 6,500 contractors, which was a lot. How are we looking to that? If you can answer that, if not, that's cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of that would just kind of depend on where the market goes. Where the freight market goes is going to be the big driver, right? And then what's the ease of getting owners into the building versus company drivers? Because like 21, 22, we were trying our hardest to get more and more owners, and we were shrinking because they were chasing the percentage,
they were chasing
and the Landstars and some of these others.
Right.
And then now obviously they're not making any money there, and we're seeing them come back, and so we're trying to just have a balanced approach, but I don't know that we have like a long-term goal of getting back to like our heyday of 6,000 owners. Not saying we can't do it,
Right.
but that's not like a priority for us to get to a certain number of owners.
I think there's probably a right balance between
Right.
company and owners, and I think we could certainly use more owners than we have right now. And we want to create flexibility into the next freight market. Like
Right.
when the cycle changes, we want our owners to have a little more flexibility of what they can choose from. You mentioned the load board. We have drivers testing that right now.
Right.
So I think we want them to look and feel different than a company driver. They want to feel like they have a little more say in what they haul. But at the same time, we need to align the goals of the owner with the goals of Swift. Right. So we're aligned. Right. So
And that is definitely our big thing is we're constantly preaching, how do we do things that will benefit us, that benefit Swift, because we're Jeff and I are both constantly trying to find the win-win.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, you lose, I win. It's not us versus them. It's how do we service our customer better so that we can both come out better on the back end.
Yeah, hey, we all want to do a good job on service, be able to charge a fair price, and to pay our owners fairly. I mean, that's our goal. And the last 2 years, we haven't been able to do much of anything on on rates for company drivers, for owners, because the freight market's been so difficult.
And part of it for us is people, I'll just say it, Charlie, people fail to make the transition from being company to an owner. They say, well, why don't we get paid more? Well, have you paid attention to what rates are doing? How are they supposed to pay us more when the rates are at the bottom like they are now? And they're not thinking about the team. You're our customer, not our employer, but it is a team. One of the questions another question that comes out, and this is for you, Jim. Equipment availability. We had a problem with getting trucks for a while. Is that, can we say that problem is solved?
That problem was long gone.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we'll have that problem again. Just COVID just like shook everything up like in such a crazy way. And the chip shortage was probably the main factor. But then it was like a shortage of every week. It was a new shortage of something. Whether it was tires, alternator, starter. It was like it just kept being a new problem for all these manufacturers.
Well, there was a while there where they were shutting off the after treatment system on trucks because they couldn't get NOx sensors in.
Yeah.
They just weren't available. So the FMC, DOT, and everybody, they just said, well, just shut them off then. Let's keep the freight running. And so you had all these trucks out there that were deleted, basically, which is illegal. But what were you going to do?
Right. And the great thing, it wasn't just diesels, right? It was F-150s. It was cars. It was that shortage was across the board with just about everybody. And it's kind of funny because I would watch driving home. The dealerships had like no cars at all for a while,
Right.
And then you saw it slowly build, and now they're packed. So.
Yeah, when we moved to Tooele, Utah in 21, there was maybe 10 cars in the local dealership that has like 3 city blocks worth of dealership.
Right. That's crazy. And then the other thing you had everyone jumping in to want to be a trucker.
Right.
That knew nothing about trucking, and they just knew that, hey, there's, I got a friend or a cousin that's making a bunch of money right now in trucking, and you had all these people rushing in to buy used and new trucks. It just, crazy.
Well, at the height, I have a 2016 Freightliner that's paid for, and at the height of all this, I could have offloaded that truck for $90,000.
It's crazy.
800,000 miles on it at the time.
Yeah, there was 4-year-old trucks selling for more than they were purchased brand new.
Right.
Yeah.
It just boggled my mind.
Yeah, I know.
And of course, I kept my 07 sitting in my yard.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, is a lot of the owners that bought those trucks, they're having to deal with that payment in this market.
Right.
And that's why it's inevitable that you're going to see capacity exit. I mean, it already has started. It's hanging on a little bit, longer than we anticipated, but it is coming out.
We think that that's because of what these guys owe the banks. Their
stubbornness.
It's just pure stubbornness. They spend all this money. They can't bring themselves to say, I'm done.
Yeah. But hey, what has happened with fuel will be probably what breaks their back.
Right.
I mean, that's the challenge. It's been up for quite a while now, and it puts a lot of pressure. Especially if you're dealing with brokers. Brokers are not easy to pass along any fuel surcharge payment they get from the end customer.
And the other thing is lenders typically right now, like in a market like now, if they loaned a guy $70,000 on a truck that was worth 90 back then, now that truck's worth 25.
Right.
They still owe 65, whatever. The bank doesn't really want that truck back because it's underwater.
No.
So they're gonna have a little more leniency about, hey, let them skip a couple months and see if they can get the head above water. So I think that's kind of helping these other little carriers stay in business longer than we ever anticipated they could.
Yeah, when we have people that we consult with, they're thinking about leaving and going and getting their own numbers. That fuel is probably the number one thing that we point out to them.
Right.
Other than how ungodly expensive that $1 million cargo insurance policy is on a first year on an authority. By the way, guys, remember it's expensive.
Right.
But at Swift, every week on our show, we actually calculate out with the Swift fuel surcharge, this is the amount of fuel mileage you need to get this week in order to not pay for fuel.
Yeah.
Just to break even.
It's usually somewhere between 8 and 8.5 miles per gallon. At that point, the fuel surcharge is literally paying for all your fuel.
Right.
And believe me, we've looked. Nobody else has a fuel surcharge like that.
I think we found 1 or 2 that have a slightly better one, but it's, yeah, you can't touch it, so we enjoy it. I mean, I can be honest. Right now, it's really hard for us to tell people now is the time to lease. This is the first time since I started leasing in 2009. Jeff was in
2007.
2007. This is the first time I've actually told people, you might want to wait. You just might want to wait, especially if you're coming in as a solo trying to lease a truck. I mean, if you got a lead on a cash truck on the outside that you can pay for and come in,
Or if you're a husband and wife team that's
Right.
going to run, 8,000 miles a week.
But from that view, it's hard for us to tell people to go ahead and make the leap. I'm like, look, if your company and you're doing okay right now, stay where you're at right now. Let's wait and see what happens. So hearing from you guys saying that we're at the bottom. Maybe we'll start seeing some of this slow, brutal climb because I believe it's going to be a very slow, brutal climb back out. That's just my beliefs from all the analytics that I go through, things like that. And it sounds like you guys are fairly close to the same.
Well, Adam, you're a numbers guy. I wish I was a numbers guy like you. I never got the degree saying I was a numbers guy. But a slow climb out is better than a vertical leap.
Right.
Yeah.
Those vertical leaps tend to also have a vertical down.
Yeah, we want consistency, right? We want to reduce volatility in our network, right? That would be ideal. Just our market is just so efficient that it just doesn't happen that way. Right? Things, come out, capacity comes out quick, comes back in quick as well. So, but I do feel like we won't see the same volatility we saw during COVID on the up and down, right? It's going to smooth out would be my expectation. But hey, it's, trucking cycles can, historically it's 1 or 2 weeks and all of a sudden, hey, it feels different. Good or bad. Like it could just take a hurricane or some type of disruption, just a holiday that, we saw good consumer demand and all of a sudden you're off to the races because enough capacity has just finally come out. Demand picks up. It doesn't take much either direction when you get close to equilibrium to really turn the tide. So it's hard to try to forecast when and how strong that lift will be. We just know it will happen. So it's not an if, it's just when and how steep it will be. I always forecast a lot more conservative than what actually happens. I never forecast it down as steep as it is or the up as steep as it is. So right now, I think from what we're hearing from customers, I think it's a modest increase. Now they probably have their view of it. That's kind of slanted their direction. We may have a different view of it, but I do feel like it will move positive. I don't know how quickly, and I don't know to what degree it'll move. But
That's the $1 million question. How quick and how much, right?
I wish I would.
If
6 months ago, I would have said 6 months.
Right, exactly,
So
yeah.
I don't know now, and I don't want to try to predict that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that's positive to us is we have not seen the guys at DAT cry on their live show in a while.
Yeah.
There was a couple months ago where the guy literally looked like he had tears.
Because it was brutal.
Because they had predicted a turn and then it ended up going the other way.
Yeah,
He was
really,
like,
it felt
those
like
guys.
it was too.
Right.
It felt like we hit the bottom.
Right.
And it wasn't.
I think it was that April time frame too,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, that poor guy.
But rarely are contract rates down 2 years in a row. It just doesn't really happen in our space because there's just not enough margin in the business across the industry to afford that. Right. So obviously this year was a very steep decline, but we had strong inclines the previous year, probably 2 years. So it was time for I think the carrier to feel that if you just look at how cycles play out. But I do feel like rates will be up next year. I don't know to what degree though.
So being that you're the president of Swift, but you've also got that second title, the CFO of Knight Swift Holdings. I always mess that whole title up.
You got it.
Looking from even the higher view down with all of the brands, with the acquisition of U.S. Express and all of these other entities now, how is your guidance down to those? I know we allow each entity to run their own business, but I would think there's some sort of guidance. Is there anything you can share with us on that? I mean, is it just keep doing what you're doing, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have initiatives that are unique to our business and the challenges that we have to overcome, right? I mean, right now, because we're feeling pressure on rate. Everyone has initiatives around cost and protecting the rate we have and trying to drive it in the right direction, right? And so we're working on that at Swift, working on that at Knight and Abilene and Bar None. U.S. Express is a kind of a different animal. That's a company we just acquired. I think closed on that July 1st. Right. And so I think there's probably a lot more opportunity given the performance of that business to improve both on the cost side and the revenue side. And so we've got 10 synergy teams that are made up of individuals from both U.S. Express and Swift and Knight that collaborate and work together on their respective areas. So probably 80 people in total working on these synergy teams. And I think there's just a lot of opportunity that we'll find. And hey, we're finding ways that we can collaborate as well in the markets and kind of understand our approach on how we, look at pricing, how we, buy with vendors, even leveraging body shops where, you have a U.S. Express who doesn't have, a lot of opportunity with a body shop in the West, and we have several at Swift that we can lean on. So we're finding ways to work together. AAA Cooper, our LTL business, certainly seeing the benefit of the Yellow bankruptcy, and so saw a lot of freight come their way and has seen a stronger market, so that's led to better pricing. And so that's a business that's performing very well, just like other LTL providers in this space. So we like having AAA Cooper in our portfolio because it does take some of the volatility out of being, the truckload, on the truckload side, right? Because that's very steady Eddie, while truckload will look much better than LTL at times and then worse than LTL at times. So we want to grow LTL even further so we can, again, take more volatility out of the parent company. Absolutely. So we want, right now we get about $1 billion of LTL revenue. We want that to be $2 billion in the next probably 3 years. Right. So that'll be a focus.
I completely dig it. Trying to explain that you just explained to our smaller core group of people, why do they keep buying companies? Why do they keep buying companies? Why this? And we try to explain it to them from our view, just two steering wheel holders, what they look at us, right? And we're like, no, they're creating that diversity. They're strengthening the company as a whole, and all of them get to hold each other up. Yes, we're all separate. Swift is separate from Knight, Abilene, Bar None, and all these things. But the overall health, I believe was being propped up by like you said, AAA Cooper is, coming for gangbusters over the whole Knight umbrella and that. So I feel good about your answer.
Yeah, and I think, with U.S. Express, I said we've had good experience with other mergers, and so it's a $2 billion company that if we can make the progress we've made in other acquisitions, it's a home run.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's a home run for the customers of U.S. Express, the employees of U.S. Express, the drivers, the contractors, the non-drivers, the mechanics. I mean, they all win from that if we can create a healthier, more financially stable company.
Charlie and I have been at Swift long enough to have seen you guys do this with other companies. We've seen it happen before. Mm-hmm. So, again, people, well, why are they doing this? Well, just watch what happens. Sit back and watch, because it works. Yeah. Trust me.
So with that, is there anything else you guys like to throw at anyone watching? Anything you guys want to throw out on?
I don't know. Is there anything else like, questions you guys get a lot, like or just even maybe concerns from drivers? I know one thing I hear, and I always try to just whenever I hear it, try to explain why is I hear a lot of drivers say, why do I see other carriers hauling our trailers?
Yes, that is a big one all the time.
Okay, good. So let me help try to explain that. So
let's kill that one.
Yeah, so power only. So what that is where we have our logistics, and I'll explain that a little bit too, because logistics can be a really huge help to our drivers, not just the company. Mm-hmm. So like logistics all through 20, 21, 22, we were giving them a ton of freight, and that just kept growing like a weed. And so then logistics would take that freight, hire an outside carrier, and oftentimes use a Swift trailer. So say it's a customer, and this goes back to my comment about commitment. So we might try to bite off more than we could even chew. Or sometimes we definitely bite off more than we can chew if we have low inbound into a market, and now all of a sudden our customer has a large shipping day, and they've got, say, 30 loads coming out of a market that we got 20 trucks, and they've got 30 trailers loaded or will have. Well, we got to find 10 trucks that we don't have. That's where power only comes into play. So then we hire an outside contractor, outside customer. They come in with their truck, haul our trailer, And then we, typically we get them a load back, so we keep our trailer pools in balance. You don't really want to go one way and start screwing up all kinds of balances. Now, we started doing that, really got heavy doing that through 20, 21, and 22. And the biggest complaint we had was we don't have enough trailers because you had these guys using our trailers. We were already somewhat tight on trailers. I mean, I kind of feel like trailers are a thing where we have them, we just don't always have access to them, typically, is the
Not
problem.
the right spot.
Yeah, or we don't know where they're at. And we've got a lot of stuff we're working on there. But we added a lot of trailers. And now the complaint we get is there's no parking, right? Because now it's full of trailers in these terminals.
I'm not happy unless there's something to complain about.
Right. So we're trying to find that balanced approach where there's enough. We always want a Swift company driver or an owner to have a trailer. Like that's number one priority. And then we want to have enough to be able to do power only. And what's great about growing logistics in an up market is now that we're in a down market, well, guess what? Every day we get freight from logistics because they go out and they get their own freight outside of what we give them. And so right now we're benefiting. Our drivers is really the one benefiting by getting more freight that we wouldn't have if we didn't have logistics. And so just kind of think of the truck going down the road towing our trailer as actually a good thing for the company, and it's a good thing for our drivers in a slow market because we do get a lot more freight than we give them.
The only downside to that is that 100-mile-an-hour truck that's pulling a Swift trailer.
I know, yeah.
And they go by driving down the wrong side of the road and cause all these problems. But they look, there goes Swift doing that crazy stuff.
And that was actually a stolen trailer. That wasn't even
Even better.
that wasn't even an authorized carrier. That was
right.
literally somebody that was using our trailer unauthorized.
Makes perfect sense.
But yeah, that video definitely went viral, and we get the black eye. But it's just hard to control trailers, until there's some technology where you can lock it down. Where somebody have to have an app to unlock it or whatever. It's just something we have to deal with, and we've got a team that works on that.
Give it another 2 years, I'm sure it'll be available.
Right. Yeah. There's some stuff out there we've looked at. It's just you think about how many trailers we have and the cost to do it. It becomes expensive. But I think you're right. At some point, there'll be something there.
Well, cool. Adam, you got anything else you want to add?
No, I
Did you
think-
want to ask real quick about the electric trucks? Since that's a big question.
Oh, electric trucks.
Just real
Where
quick.
where are we
we
on
at?
the autonomy in electric trucks?
So we have 4 electric trucks in our business in Europa Valley, there in Southern Cal. We have an order total of about 20. And as you'd imagine, new technology, it's become a real challenge. We've had 4. 2 of them have actually run a mile. The other 2, we're still working through some challenges.
Wow.
And hey, it's still hard to find the right application because they're 3 times as expensive and do a third of the work. But that technology will develop over time, and so we want to understand it. And right now we're finding just the limited application they would have in the local markets there in Southern Cal, where maybe we have some dedicated freight that doesn't need to go long distances, right? You're delivering in the Metro Valley and you're coming back to a home base where you can charge the truck. We're testing it out. There's still a long ways to go. I think it'll develop over time. It probably develops into a hydrogen electric truck rather than battery. But we'll see where it plays out. But right now, I don't see any mass conversion away from diesel. We're just kind of learning what electric means and how it
We're still going to need drivers. We're not going to have robots.
That's a whole separate
autonomous
subject,
is
right?
even further out. Autonomous may never be there, right?
We have some guys on the Facebooks that are telling these 30-year-olds they're looking for another job. That robot's going to be driving the truck.
Here's this. We had I'm using air quotes here, an autonomous type truck that we put in our fleet with all the bells and whistles that would come in an autonomous truck to test it in real life. Like, let's see, how does this actually function? And while it was driving in a very deliberate lane, Phoenix to LA, not a lot happens there. You have good weather. Right. The autonomy was.
By the way, the load has to weigh the same amount every time.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I think they asked a lot of questions, like why is the weight changed? Because we have it set for this certain weight. They didn't realize that the load was going to change. We don't always know what we're going to be loaded with. The autonomous technology was maybe available 70% of the time, and only half of that was it actually being used based on the environment around that the driver felt comfortable with. So I think there's a lot of technology that comes from it that we like the lane centering, some of the the things it can do while you're in a steady state, going down the highway, really the easiest part of the job if you're a driver. Just, you can program 90% of what you're going to encounter on the road. The other 10% is so hard to predict, maybe too expensive or nearly impossible to program around. So I just don't see a scenario where you really take the driver out of the truck.
I think that what you've seen, though, is that going to generate some additional safety features in the truck, maybe?
So I think that the life or the job of the driver improves. It's just, and some of the OEMs already offer some of these technologies. It's just, are they at a price point that makes sense? Mm-hmm. And as the technology develops, the price comes down, then it may make sense to purchase. So we're already looking at, the lane centering, the lane departure. I mean, a lot of the things we've already done, obviously the collision mitigation, which helps. So I think that technology will lead to better safety tools. Just to go full autonomous, it's very expensive to put all those together. And then they want to charge you a rate assuming that you're not paying a driver. Mm-hmm. And so the economics are still very expensive, and we could never afford to pay for that if you have a driver in the truck. And that's why the models right now are starting to fail.
I can tell you without a doubt that absolutely this lane departure stuff that makes my speakers go brrr, brrr, has made me a better driver.
I told you so.
He did. He's like you're gonna hate it at first, but it's gonna do good things.
Right. I mean, my driver leader, when I got my 2016, it was one of the first years that had that. And she, they ask you, what's your safety tip for the day, right? And I said, Dana, I got to tell you, this new truck, I thought I was a good driver. This lane departure thing proved me wrong, and now I'm a better driver.
Right.
And I was mentoring at the time, so I didn't have to argue with these guys about hugging the lane anymore because the truck told them they were.
Yeah.
So I completely appreciate things like that. I truly do. And we look at things like the Freightliners and their accident mitigation and their adaptive cruise control. So keep doing what you guys are doing, man, because I love it. I've gotten from this old 07 truck into this 23 that I don't even know how to act.
Yeah, they get better and better. I mean, just about every year they make some sort of improvement. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to do this. And yeah, I mean, I think we covered what we needed to cover.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Thank you so much.
Guys.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam.
Yep.
Good seeing you.
Jim?